Welcome to another exciting episode of Humanity 8.0, a podcast where we talk about our post-truth present and our transhuman future, with the aim of sketching out the outlines of what awaits us in the years and the decades ahead of us. This podcast is brought to you by Rocos. Companies with limited IT budgets and personnel can now get the same cybersecurity protection as big enterprises. Rocos' Secure Access Service Edge, SASE solution, with zero trust, provides enterprise-grade comprehensive cybersecurity so that you can focus on your business. For more, please visit www.rocos.com. That's ROQOS.com. And now, here's your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo.
Okay. Now let's. Can we go back to your thesis, if possible? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you addressing some of these issues right now that clearly need? I mean, I think is it fair to say that this whole thing about generative AI and UNESCO is in the very beginning of the very beginning, that we are just scratching the surface? Is it fair to say that? Yeah.
Yes, I think so, in my humble opinion.
Right. Well, I think generative AI in general is in that stage, so everything related to it. But does some of your work address some of these issues that are right now still undifferentiated? You know, we don't know how to structure, what kind of a strategy to have as far as how to tackle these. And if so, maybe you can point to a couple of these that you are looking into and writing about.
So the topic of my PhD is about how UNESCO can register AI-generated work as UNESCO's future heritage. So if I can simplify this topic with the example of World Heritage List, Intangible Cultural Heritage List, and Document Heritage List. What if we have a AI-generated work, and what if one country wants to register AI-generated work as World Heritage, or as Intangible Heritage, or as Documentary Heritage? So this is the topic of my thesis. And one of the sections in my thesis is talking about the ethics of registering AI work as UNESCO Heritage. Of course, UNESCO doesn't have a registration process only for AI work as UNESCO Heritage. So that's why I am sort of creating like a new policy, which UNESCO could consider. But of course, I am not sure whether UNESCO will consider my thesis, because this is really my independent PhD project. But in terms of the ethics of the registration of AI work as UNESCO Heritage, I am talking about the ethics about the nominators. So, for example, if you were supported by some universities, or if you were supported by some like private companies to make AI-generated work, and then your work is nominated as UNESCO Heritage, you have to consider the contributors to your work. So that can be a part of ethics regarding the nominators. So nominators should show their transparency about whom you got the support. So, and also regarding some data collections and AI algorithm design, there could be some transparency issues and ethical issues which are relevant to the examples that I explained earlier with the case of the talking games and rituals. So yeah, I am elaborating on the ethics about registration of AI work as UNESCO Heritage. But unfortunately or realistically, this is not something that already happened. So I need to imagine some scenarios, and then I got some ideas about the scenario from my interviewee, who had worked at UNESCO before, and also I did interview with AI artists who already experienced these kind of ethical issues. So yeah, that can be they will be part of my PhD thesis. Yes.
Okay. Well, would you say that some of your work, or maybe the core of your work, can be used in other contexts beyond beyond UNESCO? Because it seems to me that you're doing some very important thinking that is focused on let's call it use case, right? One specific use case, right? But that doesn't necessarily have to simply be useful in that use case, meaning that there's a way to take a step back to say, well, we can apply it here and here and here. Do you believe that you are sort of playing in that world where you can actually leverage some of your work?
Yeah, one of the chapters is about the agency of human and agency of AI when they interact with together in producing some cultural works. So, for example, for some of my interviewees, AI is just a tool because AI just implements tasks asked by my interviewees. But to some of my interviewees, AI is not just a tool, but they are co-author, or AI is some friends to work with, or AI is kind of like independent artist who help my interviewees. So there are a certain various degrees of agency of AI when it comes to creating cultural works, such as sculpture, painting, like books or novels, etc. So maybe so I am elaborating on kind of a spectrum of the agency of AI in creating cultural works. So maybe that part can be used in a theoretical way, and it can be like further contextualized in terms of the various topics that my readers will be using.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think agency is a big concept right now that we're grappling with. For example, what is the difference between let's say, using GPT for creating visuals where the artist, are involved? What is the difference between that and the artist who uses a brush and colors? Right? I don't think I have thought enough to be able to, because sometimes the artist does feel like their equipment is their friend. It's not they wouldn't say it's a tool, it's an extension of them, right? And that sort of, maybe we can leverage that into, but is there, I guess you thought about it a lot more, so I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, for example, a painter who paints using hardware, right? And a painter who uses software, generative AI. How would one go about sort of saying, yeah, there is a difference between those two relationships between me and my tools, if both of those are tools? How would you go about trying to figure out, well, yeah, they are similar in this way, but they are not similar in this other way? How would you go about doing that?
So if I can talk about some difference between a tool and an independent agent when it comes to creating cultural work, I would say that the tool is kind of some object, and that tool is synchronized with the human body. So let's say you are doing an oil painting, so you are using a brush as your tool. So your brush and your hands are synchronized. So the brush will be moving at the same way that your hands are moving. So your intellectual activity in your brain and your physical activity over your hands are synchronized with your brush. So I think that can be one example, or some explanations about what tool means by. But when it comes to generative AI, it is software. And then sometimes the generative AI, including ChatGPT, they will be giving you some answers which you are not able to 100% predict. So it is not synchronized with your brain. It is not synchronized with your hands. And also, I think that can be one of the differences between tool and generative AI. Also, the generative AI is very contextual. So it depends on what kind of data you have collected and what kind of input data you provided into your generative AI program. So in terms of brush, we can predict its function, right? So it is not contextual. It will be moving in accordance with your hand moving. But generative AI will be giving you different answers in terms of your data collection, in terms of your AI algorithm design, so which humans cannot 100% predict. And one of the interviewees I've met online, he is a data scientist. And he also said that one of the issues of machine learning algorithm is that we humans cannot know exactly 100% about what this AI will be giving you as an answer to a text, to a task. So I think that can be some difference between generative AI and a simple tool in a traditional way.
Okay. Well, let's just push this one more iteration, which is the following. Let's say I'm a painter, and painter is really it's all painting. There's color, there's the brush, the type of brush that you use. There's the canvas. There is the there's your mood as a painter. There's a time of day. There's a whole lot of things that that the artist is not in control of, and often artists discover something as they are, like they play around with the colors and discover something that surprises them, right? It's the meaning. Is there really that much of a control in the context of somebody who's painting? So I know my colors and so on, but I'm creating, and it's not simply taking something that already exists in my head and just putting it there. The process itself is in fact revealing things to me. So there's an element of unknown, really, when somebody's painting. That I'm just trying to push the argument. I'm not saying that is the right way to go. There's still so there's that the level of uncertainty in generative AI is like you don't know exactly what you're gonna get. But isn't that also something that the painter or the artist or let's say the novelist doesn't know exactly where his characters are going to be. They have a sense for them, and then the character surprises them, like wow. I didn't think the story was going to go this way, right? I think most novelists or short story writers, they don't know exactly where they're going, but they have a sense that that their characters have a certain integrity about them in terms of they wouldn't say that, but they would say this. But I don't know what they would say next, right? So how would you? I know I'm pushing the envelope here because I don't know even if this is good criticism or not. But are we simplifying things when we say the uncertainty of generative AI is what differentiates us, that experience between that and let's say a painter or novelist?
I think unpredictability exists in both traditional arts and in generative AI program as well, just as you mentioned right now. But the thing is that I think the nature of unpredictability could be different here. For example, unpredictability of traditional painting, as you just mentioned, you cannot 100% predict about what kind of painting you will be drawing. But this kind of unpredictability comes from your own intellectual activity and your own personal experience and how you use your brush and how you use your canvas. So the interaction comes from like just yourself, and the interaction comes from you and other objects, other tools here. But when it comes to unpredictability in generative AI program, is more about the data processing. So it is not just interaction between you and yourself. It's more interaction between you and another intelligent agent who process data. So I think that is the biggest difference between the unpredictability which exists in traditional arts and which exists in generative AI programs.
Okay. Although one can say that my background, my culture, my status in society, and so on and so forth are sort of my bias, if you want to call it bias, right? Sort of the data from which we want to call it data I'm trying to build. But no, I think I understand. I think there's ways to go for us to, because I don't think I fully understand how artists are using generative AI. Because I've seen a lot of creation, a lot of stuff that they've created is just amazing in terms of visuals and so on. But I don't think I understand yet, and I need to do some research how they go about doing that. Is it how involved are they, right? Because I think that's your point, right? Are they really involved in the creation, or they do a few things and then all of a sudden So it's very skewed. So I can see definitely your argument. If it's that process is you just do a few things and not a lot of themselves comes out, whereas somebody who's struggling with painting and so on, their character comes out, their style, their background. And so when we say that it's the agency here is a lot more prominent, excuse me, in the case of the painter than in the case of the of somebody who's doing generative AI. So I don't know. I think I just need to learn more about how. Maybe I should invite an artist who does this for a living, and ask them how they do this. Like how much of themselves comes into that, because I think that's your point on how much of yourself do you put in creating as opposed to just doing a few strokes, right?
So it depends on the choices of a human artist regarding how they will be using the generative AI.
Right.
So my interviewees provided me like a wide range of the options about how human artists can use AI. So for example, there were some interviewees who used ChatGPT and DALL-E 2 and Midjourney. So Midjourney and DALL-E 2 is more like visualization version of ChatGPT. So if you type some text on the ChatGPT provides you some answers in text. But Midjourney and DALL-E will give you some output as visual images. So there are some interviewees who use those pre-trained generative AI programs, because my interviewees are not the developers of DALL-E. They are not the developers of the ChatGPT. They are not developers of the Midjourney. But they chose to use them because they thought those programs were enough to express their artistic styles. So in that case, human artists just type some sentences on ChatGPT or Midjourney or DALL-E 2, and then Midjourney or DALL-E 2 or ChatGPT will give you some answers, which are outputs, and then those human artists will choose some of the outputs which they think best depict their artist expressions. So this is one type of cases about how humans can use generative AI. And in other case, there are some interviewees who do the whole cycle of AI programs as a whole. So some of the artists who I interviewed, they collected data by themselves, they design AI programs by themselves, and then they also choose some of the outputs from their AI algorithm designed by my interviewees. And also there are other cases. So one of my interviewees made some machines, some robots, and then my interviewee let those machines move autonomously. So in that case, the machines of my interviewees has very highest degree of agency because it can move autonomously or randomly, because my interviewees are not controlling those machines. So it really depends on how to design your whole process about how to use AI to create your cultural work. So that's why it is more controversial. That's why it is really complicated. Yeah.
It is, yeah. So let's take the second case there, or the second where the artist goes and collects their data, and there are a lot more hands-on, and so one can liken that process to the process of somebody who's sculpting, right? They go and they find a material, and there's a whole process where it's very manual, literally manual, right? But also intellectual in the sense of what kind of clay, and so forth. There's a whole process there that is really both manual and if one separates that. And so, and in the case of somebody who's collecting data and being driven by some kind of an inner desire to express something, they don't know exactly what it is, but they're sort of collecting, and then they have, I think I've seen a couple of examples where they're like it's sort of they are immersed in the process of just feeling it, like, oh yeah, this is what I want, right? And so in that case it feels like it's getting closer, right, to say somebody who is doing sculpture or painting. If so, the extent of, I guess I'm trying to get to sort of a very fundamental question, which is what makes something a work of art? Is it the extent to which the artist is engaged in the process, perhaps? And maybe generative AI is clarifying that for us.
So that was exactly one of the interview questions that I asked to my interviewees. So some of the interviewees mentioned that AI art can have artistic value if it has very physically, aesthetically important value. But to other interviewees of mine, they said that if the process of AI generated art per se can be supportive for our human artists to express their own artistic style, then that can have some artistic value. So it was quite, I got really diverse opinions about the value of AI art from my interviewees as well. But from my understanding, this is just like preliminary conclusion of my thesis and from my analysis of my interviewees. I think if on AI artwork can represent some human identity or humans' artist style, that can have some kind of value. But as I mentioned, AI work is highly associated with ethical and legal issues here. So if AI work is nominated as UNESCO Heritage in the future, I think that AI work should pass some ethical procedure and legal procedure, as well as artistic value as well. So I think we need to see the whole AI cycle, which I mentioned earlier, if we want to evaluate whether or not this particular AI work has any kind of value here.
Yeah, I guess my point was really, and I agree with you in terms of your strategy there. My point was, it seems to me that at least in some instances, the effort of trying to understand things like what does it mean for a piece of art that an artist has created using generative AI. What does it mean for it to be a piece of art? Should it be a piece of art? Because we have a lot of AI involved in this. I think that kind of question forces us to go back and ask ourselves, okay, well, what can we learn from this kind of a struggle about what AI, what an artist is? How can we use that to explain why we take a painting without question as being a work of art? Where did this person get their ideas, for example? Right? Because we don't question that. We just say, oh, they created it. It's him or her, right? Where did they get their ideas? Did somebody, did they borrow it from somebody and install it? Did they credit somebody, right? So these are things that we sort of, we take as a black box in traditional art, but here we're questioning, and I'm saying that one of the advantages not only in art, but everywhere, like, creating a piece of text, right? We never challenge someone unless plagiarism. When it comes to AI, I say, well, where did you get a text from? Who are the sources? How did you compensate? Maybe we can use some of these concepts, some of these learnings back into the real world, so to speak, or the traditional world, whether it's art and all that. Does that make sense in terms of my thought there about how to transplant, or how to leverage a lot of these learnings and questionings into things that we didn't really question much?
I think that can be relevant to one of the issues about the changes of the mode of human expression.
Yeah.
So let's say if you want to draw something on the canvas, you have to train yourself about how to use painting, how to use canvas, etc. So that can be some qualities about how to be a human painter, to express your own artistic styles. But with this generative AI, nowadays we have new terminology, which is called prompt engineering. So prompt engineering means by your talent, your skills at making some sentences and type your sentences on the AI generative AI platform. For example, you can ask any kind of question on ChatGPT, but to what extent you can make your question specific, and to what extent you can make your questions more efficiently, that can be relevant to the skills of prompt engineering. So the more you're trained about how to use prompt engineering, the better output you will be getting from the generative AI programs. So we can talk about this kind of new skills about how to use AI to express your artistic or some emotional intentions to create some cultural works. But also is relevant to some plagiarism issues, which you mentioned. So when it comes to the plagiarism of traditional art, we can say that if you plagiarize or if you imitate Van Gogh style, you can see it, right? Let's say you imitate the Starry Night of Van Gogh, and people can see that, oh, okay, you are imitating Van Gogh style from the Starry Night. But in terms of AI, it is more tricky because let's say you make a sentence and then you type this sentence on the Midjourney. So let's say, hi Midjourney, please create a picture of an astronaut on horse. So this is really generic sentence. And then also you can update sentence. Let's say, hey Midjourney, please create a astronaut in a black astronaut suit and on a like white horse. And please draw this picture in a like romantic style. So it is a more specific sentence. So it is really like there are like 100 ways of how to making this kind of sentences. And then it is quite tricky that you said that I have ownership about this particular sentence because this sentence can be written by other human users of Midjourney. So in that case, it can be one of the problems. And also in terms of the design of algorithm as well. One of the most efficient and common algorithms in the field of AI art is the generative adversarial network algorithm, which is called GAN algorithms. And the creators of the GAN algorithms, I think they are still alive, I think. And then, but the thing is that GAN algorithms has been diversified by many human programmers. So in that case, how can we make the claim about the ownership of these GAN algorithms? So because of these kind of issues, as far as I'm concerned, there are some movements in the computer science field that we have to make a system regarding the patent of a particular AI algorithms. But this GAN algorithm is really common, and I think more than 90% of computer programmers know about how to design GAN algorithms. So in that case, plagiarism issues is more tricky in terms of AI field, which we also have to think about together as like future research issues. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I think there are like schools like Impressionism, and Cubism, right? They started usually with one or two people, and then it became a school. And no one really can say that, hey, you're plagiarizing. It's like it's a movement or it's a style, right? And then in the case, I think what you're saying in the case of generative AI, it is, again, it goes back to the level of effort that one expends in building something, and the more effort, the more you put in that is yours, regardless of whether you're leveraging other, the more it can be considered to be a legitimate piece of art. So if you just take something completely and just put your name on it, of course, right, that's not. But if you make a lot of effort into taking something or many things, right, and then that becomes a thing that you created. So does it come down to really how much of yourself did you put into the creation of this artifact, regardless of what kind of tools you are using, or whether you are replicating some, or whether you are in the style of someone or not? Would you say that that's at least part of it, the level of effort you put in?
Yes, which I totally agree with. But the thing is that it is quite tricky to evaluate whether or not you make enough effort.
Right.
The concept of enough effort is really tricky one. And, and that is one of the issues in my PhD thesis as well, because I think that if one AI generated work is nominated as UNESCO Heritage, that AI work should represent a community's or a human artist some intentions or relevant social and cultural context. And to do so, humans can make various efforts here. Maybe humans can design the whole process of AI work. In that case, we don't know how to evaluate this about like enough effort. So what I'm making in my thesis is kind of questionnaire about how to evaluate whether these human artists make enough effort. So for example, did you collect your data by yourselves, or did you get any support from any kind of institutions when you collect your data, or when you choose the final output from your generative AI program, did you choose by yourself, or any other people supported you to choose the final output? These kind of things. So I am making this kind of questionnaire to evaluate some value of AI generated work as heritage for future generations.
Okay. Well, the time is, again, I always say when I'm having fun, time goes by very fast. So Sampark, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was very fascinating what you're doing. And I think definitely probably you're doing this. There's a whole world of AI ethics that is just exploding. I'm sure you know that, beyond UNESCO and all that. So I think those folks, I think you have a whole universe of places where you can present aspects of your work. I mean, I'm really interested in how much can we learn, because right now what we're doing, we're diving deep into some concepts that we just didn't unfold or unpack before, right? Like when an artist paints a painting and they sell it, nobody really asks them, well, how much effort did you put into it? Did you copy somebody or not? We just say, this strikes me as a work of art or not. So equity, for example, like who was part of this and all that, hopefully those will transplant into the real world, let's call it, right? And so that we can make some progress in terms of social justice, inclusiveness, and so on and so forth, which right now are just black boxes in the in any case. Thank you so much again. I know taking 1 hour off your schedule is a big deal when you are like working on your dissertation. I used to be in that world where when I'm not working on my thesis, I'm like, why am I doing this? I need to go back to my to my books and work on. But so I thank you so much for making the time.
No, it was really fun, and I really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
You bet. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Humanity 8.0 with your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo. Brought to you by Rokos. Thanks for listening.